Today on the Inside Scoop, Texas Tech trending for more commits, Miami five-star buzz, major developments with Texas top targets, and we're going to break down the Florida Gator quarterback board. So we got a big show today. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. Let's get to it. Let's talk some Miami recruiting. We got five-star buzz to cover with E.J. Holland, the newest insider in the Miami market. He is now working at CaneSport, and we are going to get him in here to talk about the latest news in Miami recruiting. But first, Canes fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. Hit it to the Rivals Recruit channel. We're going to be here talking Canes recruiting all offseason long. Let's bring in insider E.J. Holland. And you were out at the Rivals camp with five-star offensive tackle Mark Matthews. What is the latest on Mark Matthews? We hear a lot about him, whether it be Ohio State, Miami. I mean, really every team in the country would like to land Mark Matthews. But does Miami have the inside lane here?
Yeah, I think so. This was my second time talking to Mark Matthews in person over the last couple months. And, you know, Miami's been the constant. Obviously, he's a South Florida kid. He told me, you know, one of the things weighing on him is just being close to home, getting to go home and see his mom and eat some home-cooked meals. And I think that I wouldn't say there's a lot of pressure for Mark Matthews to stay home, but I would say that it's something that is playing a factor here. But it's not just staying home and playing for Miami. It's also going and getting developed by Alex Mirabal. I think that's a huge selling point. Mirabal is one of the best offensive line coaches in the entire country, if not the best. And Mark Matthews knows he can get developed right at home. Really, is there any reason for him to leave home? You know, you talk about maybe an NIL wild card in Texas A&M. Georgia's making a nice push. Like you mentioned, Ohio State is in the mix as well. But, I mean, Miami takes care of things on the NIL front, so I'm not really worried there. I think that they've made it clear that Mark Matthews is, you know, one of the top, if not the top of the board priority this cycle. They absolutely want to keep him home. And I think Miami's done everything right in this recruitment. Now, Mark plays the game well. He doesn't give too much away in terms of, you know, when he does his interviews and things of that nature. He told us that he doesn't have any visits set, which I don't know if I believe Mark, but he said he doesn't have any unofficial or official visits set at this time, but I do expect him to be on campus at least a couple of times this spring. You know, he knows a lot of guys on Miami's roster. It's right down the street for him to get to. So, you know, I think Miami needs to just keep doing what it's doing. And I do like the Hurricanes in that recruit.
All right. Well, it wouldn't be a five-star Miami segment without bringing up wide receiver Nick Lanier. I know he wasn't at the Rivals camp, but Miami fans love this wide receiver. He's one of the best, not just in South Florida, but across the country. You still feel confident in the Canes' position here for Nick Lanier?
Yeah, I think so. I think Miami's been the team to beat for this entire process. I don't really see that changing. You know, there are a few other schools involved, but most of the buzz has been with Miami here. And I think Miami's in the mix with quite a few, you know, elite wide receivers, but Nick Lanier is right at the top of the board. So much like Mark Matthews, they're going to do everything they can to keep Nick Lanier at home. And, you know, I think Kevin Beard, Miami's wide receivers coach, has done an excellent job of relationship building. Mario Cristobal, Miami's head coach, has obviously been personally involved in this recruitment. I think you look at what Malachi Toney did this year as a South Florida guy coming in as a true freshman and now basically being the face of the program. You know, everybody wants to talk about Malachi Toney, and I think that's a big selling point for Nick Lanier as well. So, you know, if you can keep Mark Matthews and Nick Lanier at home, I mean, those would be two massive wins for the Hurricanes and really set the foundation of the class.
Now, you said that the Canes are involved in a couple of elite wide receivers. One name that kind of sparked my interest, I saw you reporting on, was Julius Jones Jr. Obviously, Julius Jones' father played at Notre Dame. He's a legacy recruit. The Irish are all in on him, and he's a top recruit in America, but it sounds like Miami is working their way into this recruitment.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've had a chance to talk to Julius a few times here recently, including at the Rivals camp this weekend. And I think there are two schools that could potentially pull him away from Notre Dame. And obviously, he's not committed there or anything. We're just
Right.
saying that because he is a legacy recruit
For
and
sure.
his dad was great for the Irish. But I think Oregon and Miami are the two schools to really watch with Julius. Now, he's already set a spring visit with Oregon. He hasn't set one up with Miami just yet. He told me that's mostly because kind of like Mark Matthews proximity, like he's going to go there a couple of times and just catch a practice here and there whenever works for his schedule. So again, much like with Nick Lanier, I think Kevin Beard has done a fantastic job in this recruitment. And when I asked Julius what stands out about Miami, he said Kevin Beard, and I think those relationships are just playing such a big role. And when you look at Miami's coaching staff, I mean, Mario Cristobal as a head coach just does a fantastic job as a recruiter himself, and he's making a big impression on Julius. So yeah, he's a Notre Dame legacy. He grew up around the program. He, even remembers a little bit of a rivalry with Miami, but I think him being a South Florida kid, growing up close to Miami, being really familiar with the program, feeling prioritized by this coaching staff, especially by Cristobal. I think that's playing a big role in his recruitment. So yeah, I think Miami can win this one. And I think Julius, just great kid, kind of fits that foundation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that trio there, Mark Matthews, Nick Lanier, Julius Jones. I mean, again, like I mentioned, a few minutes ago, I think what a fantastic foundation for the Hurricanes if they're able to keep those guys close to home.
Yeah. All right. Now, when we talk Miami, we got to talk big flips. And normally, in general, when it comes to Miami flips, they happen at the end. Mario Cristobal goes all in on some of these guys after recruiting them the entire cycle. He doesn't care when they commit to another program. It only matters who they sign with in the end. And there's two big flip targets we got to talk about, both on the defensive line. Jalen Brewster, not just the number one defensive lineman in America, but the number one player in America, and also defensive lineman DJ Jacobs out of the state of Georgia made an early commitment to Ohio State. So Jalen Brewster committed to Texas Tech, and DJ Jacobs committed to Ohio State. Are these the big targets on the board right now when we talk about Miami flips?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, DJ Jacobs, I went out to Atlanta to meet with him a couple of weeks ago, and I think he still holds Miami in high regard.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten a little tired of all the Miami buzz despite his commitment to Ohio State, but DJ was great. I mean, he gave some great quotes about the Hurricanes, and I think Miami's going to be in the mix with Jacobs until the very end. I mean, you remember that commitment was really interesting. Miami was considered the leader right up until the announcement when he kind of switched to Ohio State. So it's February, Josh. There's still a long time to go before the early signing period. So Miami just needs to keep working, get him back on campus. I think they'll, like I said, continue to be a factor in that recruitment, especially with what Miami did in the college football playoff, with how they develop pass rushers, having a guy like Jason Taylor. And, you've seen Miami lose a couple of staffers to the NFL. And I think there was some buzz on Jason Taylor, but he's staying. And I think that's playing a big role with Jacobs too. So again, Miami just has a lot to sell right now. And I think that, again, it's a long time to go before early signing period. So they'll be in the mix there. And Jalen Brewster's interesting, man. I know our national guys have been reporting that he's solid with Texas Tech, and maybe he is. Texas Tech obviously had a great season. They have a lot to sell from an NIL standpoint. Joey McGuire, their head coach, was the previous head coach at Cedar Hill, Jalen Brewster's high school. So a lot of connections in that recruitment. But like you said, man, you can never count out Miami. I knew that from the Michigan beat. Miami would come in and steal a couple of Michigan guys. So I think that they're in the mix with Jalen Brewster. I exchanged some messages with him the other day. He told me he is set to make a visit to Miami this spring. They visited him during the winter contact period. And even though he may be happy with his commitment to Texas Tech, it looks like he's at least exploring some other options. And like I mentioned, with DJ Jacobs, you look at what Miami did this season, how they were able to develop their defensive linemen. That's something that has to be really, really appealing to Jalen Brewster. And I mentioned, Texas Tech doing really well on the NIL front. Again, that's not a problem for Miami. So, I think they're doing a great job with Brewster and have done a great job the last couple of weeks. So we'll see how that one plays out, man. That one's going to be interesting. Again, it's just February, so a long time to go before the early signing period. Could be some big flips in store for the Hurricanes.
Talk Texas recruiting. We got some major developments that went down overnight. Justin Wells, insider at Inside Texas, has the latest. He's going to take us behind the scenes of this recent news. But first, Texas fans, we are going to be talking Longhorn recruiting all offseason long, and we want you to be a part of it. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Rivals Recruits channel. All right, let's bring in Justin Wells, and let's talk about the big news that you reported yesterday. It has to do with some official visits of top targets locked in. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so last night we had a couple new guys enter the OV and unofficial visit forum. My man Charlie Williams at Inside Texas reported that Jabarius Garr, he's an edge commit for Alabama out of Mobile. Mm-hmm. He's going to be in for an official visit. He's actually coming in for July 15th through the 14th or 12th to the 14th. That's another kid that Texas, Alan Clark went by to see him recently. They're starting to build a relationship there. They'd like to grab a couple edges in this cycle. Then I turned around and reported number 2 defensive lineman Marcus Fakatu has got an unofficial visit scheduled for Texas. And it's important because he says he doesn't have a whole lot of others scheduled out yet. This is big, too, because Texas hosted him last year for the Texas A&M game in November. They really like him. As soon as Will Muschamp gets the job, they go straight to California. He's the first kid they go see. That really resonated with him. Now, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, the big schools that are involved are there. But he's going to be at Austin on April 9th. That's big. Because he is really growing with Kenny Baker and with Alan Clark and Coach Muschamp. And right now, like I said, it seems like this is one of those recruitments that Texas just takes their time on. They kind of hit on all cylinders and sort of just let it build out. I wouldn't be shocked if he takes an official visit to Texas as well. He's, like I said, he's been there before, but those are the 2 substantial ones. Garr and Fakatu setting the official visit and unofficial was big news for Texas.
Yeah, it's starting to line up. Another bit of news: wide receiver Quentin Hale out of California is coming off the board in a couple days. Texas never really got involved with him, so wanted to ask you, who is Texas making a priority right now at wide receiver?
Yeah, they liked Hale. They just didn't like him as much as I think USC does. Texas is in such a great spot at receiver. They have the number 1 kid in the class, Easton Royal, and they're holding on to him like 38 special. They're holding on loosely because they know that guy's going to trip. But you know what? He's your ceiling and he's your floor. So they can have some fun with these next 2 guys. 2 guys that you need to know about are Bryson Thrower out of North Forney. Texas, they're just really getting closer. Like, Thrower's a guy that's not really highly ranked yet. Let Cody and Charles Power get to see him again. Let those re-rankings come out. I think he's going to climb into 4-star status. Thrower is the hardest kid to cover in DFW, according to a lot of the coaches in the Metroplex. And then you got Trey Moore, and let's not overthink it. That's a Pflugerville-Weiss kid. He's right down the road. He's local. Don't overthink this, guys. I think Trey is another kid that they should probably wave in at receiver. They have a number of other kids they really like. Alvin Mosley. They really like some out-of-state cats. Amari Stevens. They're going to have him, try to get him on campus for an unofficial in the spring. That one's going to be tough to take from Miami. They have a ton of momentum right now, and they're recruiting really at a high level right now. But Texas is having fun at wide receiver this cycle. They got their big dog, and now they're going to go for about 2 regulars. And I think this is more about NIL. This is about resource allocation. You can't just get the big 5 stars and load them up anymore. You have to have balance along your roster. And I think that's kind of what Texas is looking at this cycle.
Yeah, good point. Modern recruiting, a little different. Let's talk now, because we talked about a lot about what's going to happen coming out of spring, into these visits. So who are some names that you think Texas must get on campus this spring, this summer, in order to have a legit shot at?
I'm going to give you 2 corners that are probably the top 2 corners on the board. And that's Joshua Dobson out of Amos Huff out in Cornelius, North Carolina. And then you have John Meredith I believe he's number 1 or number 2. He might be number 2 corner in the country. He's from Euless Trinity, but I got to remind myself that he transferred to North Crowley, and so he's a Fort Worth cat now. Texas really needs to get those 2 guys on campus. Yeah. Look, they're in a good spot with Meredith, the 5-star in-state kid, but they're not in a great spot. Texas A&M had the lead there for a while. It feels like that's kind of faded. Ohio State, I think they took the baton. It feels like they've kind of got some momentum now, and they'll go to the Metroplex, and they will recruit anybody just like anybody else. Meredith's one that Texas likes, and they really like. You want to see him do that dance a little bit more.
Yeah, it's
been a minute since he's been back to campus. He's been a few times to Texas already, but they really need to get him back to kind of make it real. Dobson is the big one. That's the one, and Mark Orfe's doing a great job there. They've already gone out to see him once. Dobson is very eager to make it back. He wants to see Texas again. So to make it real, I think on the defensive side, those are the two of those 2 corners, 5 stars, just elite guys. Texas would try to take both, but they wouldn't. They would likely only get one. And then on the offensive side, Landon Williams-Callis is the question that everybody asks me. That's the top running back in the state. Right now, that's an Oregon, Texas A&M lean. Texas really needs to get him back on campus. Before Jabbar Jaluk took over, that recruitment basically disappeared. Jaluk has really asserted himself. He's prioritized LWC. If they can get him back this spring, Josh, that is huge because they want 2 running backs this cycle. They look really good with Lathan Wissington, a kid from Waco Midway, about an hour and a half north. They look good for a couple other cats. Noah Roberts, they're talking him out in Arizona. But, man, really, if they could get Landon Williams-Callis on offense back on campus, if they could get John Meredith and Joshua Dobson, the corner duo, back on campus this spring, those recruitments become more real.
Yeah, I agree. So when it comes to the state of Texas, it sounds like there's some fierce battles going on. I talked with Sam about this last week, just the battle for the state of Texas. How do you feel like the Longhorns stack up when it comes to in-state battles?
That's a great question. I'm kind of curious what Sam said.
It seemed, well, we were talking in context of Ohio State and Ohio State's targets, and there was a lot of talk about Texas A&M. They lead for this guy, or this guy's going to end up at Texas Tech, and it didn't seem as we were talking as much. And I know Texas recruits nationally, but it didn't seem, at least right now, that they're favored for some of these top in-state names.
What's crazy is I think they're favored for the guys they want to be favored for.
Okay.
I think they prioritize who they want. Now, they would love to be in a better standing with some of these other guys, but I'll give you an example. Kennedy Brown, one of the top prospects in the country. I don't think Texas is prioritizing him. I think they think he's a guard. I think they feel like he's probably better at right tackle. Is he the same level prospect as Ishmael Kamara? No, he's not. And so they're picking and choosing kind of what pathways they want to go. Texas Tech, that's another one. Peyton Miller, big time center out of Anna, Texas. That's a Texas Tech battle. The Red Raiders they were early in that recruitment. Lathan Wissington, the running back we talked about from Midway, that's a Texas Tech battle. So the Horns they've got some battling on their hands. And then with Texas A&M, that's John Meredith, that's your Kennedy Brown, that's your Brian Swanson. That's the O-lineman out of Sauk. That's some of those guys that you're talking about. And so I think each school kind of picks and chooses which guy they want to prioritize, which one they want to put on the pedestal, so to speak. A few of those guys are going to go to Tech. A few of those guys are going to go to Texas A&M. But I think overall, Texas still pretty much picks and chooses who they want for the most part. Sometimes it gets a little scrappy in November and December, but I think that's why you see more of that balance because NIL era is more about roster management now, more so than it is picking and choosing the best every cycle. You have to be more judicious. You have to be much smarter with resource allocation. And I think that has kind of evened the playing field. I think that's why some of the top guys, you got Jalen Brewster and Kadrian Redmond committed to Tech. You got Texas A&M with Jaquan Snell. And then you got the Horns who are in a great spot right now with a decent little start to the class. And so I think the NIL era and portal have really balanced it out. But again, usually when Texas identifies a kid they really, really want, usually they're in it till the end.
Yeah, you call it prioritization. Some might call it budgeting. But either way, you can't take them all because you can't afford them all anymore. And you got to have a spot, right? Because if they're not starting, you're not going to be paying a guy top line money to sit on the bench. And he's not going to be sitting on the bench either. So this is different. But also, on the other end of it, Texas goes into the state of Georgia and can land a top 3 player. They can go into the state of Florida and land the number 1 running back in that state. So it's just different. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just different right now.
Sign of the times.
Yeah, sign of the times. Texas fans, what do you think? Who is your priority when it comes to in-state recruiting? Who do you want to see end up being a Longhorn? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk Florida Gator recruiting. We got Corey Bender, insider at Gators Online. We're going to talk quarterback recruiting. We're going to figure out who's at the top of the board. Also, who are they trending for on the offensive line? We got the latest developments here on the Rivals Recruits channel. Make sure you guys are subscribed because we're talking Gator recruiting all offseason long. All right, let's bring in Corey Bender with Gators Online, and let's start with that quarterback board. First of all, how many quarterbacks are really on it, and who's a priority right now?
Yeah, right now, Josh, I would say there's about 3 or 4 guys that we're really monitoring. I think 5-star Elijah Haven. He was a kid that was leaning toward Florida under the previous staff when Billy Napier was there. And then as time went on, they made the coaching changes. Alabama kind of pulled it more into the driver's seat. There's other schools in the mix too, but Florida's still in the hunt. They're supposed to be getting a spring visit. And as a lot of people know, he was planning to actually make a commitment between January and February. That has not happened yet. If that does happen, I think Alabama will probably be in the driver's seat for that commitment. Right. But, Florida's playing the long game. I know Florida's still heavily pursuing him. I mean, there's a lot of familiarity in Gainesville. So Florida's going to play the long game. So he's obviously up there as a 5-star prospect. 4-star prospect Champ Mons out of Vero Beach. He's another one who, reclassified from the 2028 class. Now, obviously, going to be a rising senior. He visited in January, has Florida near the top of his list. But I think with him, it's a little bit more crowded. You have Florida State, Tennessee. You have a lot of schools kind of pursuing him. He's a guy I think is going to take his time. Kind of has a lot of schools in that one big bundle. And I think when it comes to like springtime NOVs, that's when you're going to see more separation with him. But, Joe Craddock, the quarterback coach at Florida, he obviously did a few in-homes with him back in January. They got him on campus for the Elite Junior Day. So he's emerged as a guy that we're monitoring very closely, a guy that shares a lot of mutual interest with Florida. And I think one other guy to mention too, Josh, is Davin Davidson, a guy down in Sarasota, almost about 6'7", state champion quarterback who has obviously a really strong arm. And we saw him up in Gainesville in January. He was also there for the Elite Junior Day and every bit of that size. I mean, he's a guy that, right now, I don't think there's probably a more hotter quarterback in the state of Florida than him since the end of last season. I mean, every time you look on his Twitter profile, he's reporting high major offers. I believe Notre Dame just offered. He already has the 3 big in-state schools in Florida State, Miami. So I know obviously there's some connections with Miami there. I know there's some people he knows that grew up like in Miami. So that's a school to look out for. I know Florida, they offered him at the Junior Day. We obviously know John Summerall visited him at school. That shows that he's obviously near the top of the board. So I think those 3 right there, the ones we are monitoring most. And I think another one too is former Michigan commit Peter Bork. He just reopened his recruitment over the past 24 hours. Florida's a school that has reached out. There really hasn't been. It's the early stages, but Florida was one of those programs that wasted little time reaching out. So we'll be tracking him throughout the spring as well.
A lot of great options there on the quarterback board in a very important cycle for John Summerall and his staff at the quarterback position. It sounds like they're going to get a good one. I'd like to hear from Gator fans. Who is your top quarterback target? Put it in the comment section below. All right. It sounds like offensive line recruiting. This is something Florida Gator fans haven't heard in a while, but offensive line recruiting is off to a great start. Phil Troutwine, I think that's how you say the offensive line coach's name. He's in there. He's in there with Maxwell Hiller. He's a 5-star. It sounds like Alabama, Florida. Also Leighton Von Brandt. What else are you hearing about Florida when it comes to these offensive line targets?
Yeah, those are the first 2 that come to mind. Obviously, I think with Maxwell Hiller, I just think with Florida, the old staff offered him, but there was no traction there. And he was one of the first guys to Troutwine re-offer when he got to Florida. And that just shows just the surge that Florida has and the pull he has, that Florida went from probably outside his top 10 up into the top 2. So I think obviously he's the main guy, the cornerstone that we're looking at. But I think Peyton Miller, that's a kid out of Texas that Florida has a lot of traction with as well. Texas Tech is a school, too, that's near the very top of his list. He's another one that, Florida actually was supposed to get him on campus in January for the Elite Junior Day. A lot of these kids from Texas couldn't make the trip because of weather. That following Monday, Troutwine got on the road and immediately saw him on Monday. They made up for that loss of FaceTime that they weren't able to have in Gainesville. So that showed to me right there that this is a guy they really want in the class. Has a multi-day visit set up for March, and he's going to take an OV as well, more than likely in May. I think he's the guy that we're going to be tracking. Sean Tatum is another big in-state offensive line target near the very top of Florida's board. Just a few weeks ago, he told us Florida and Tennessee were at the top, and Miami was third. Now, after at the rivals camp over the weekend, Miami, he's saying that Miami's taking the lead. And I think that one's going to go back and forth. I think he's a guy that is going to take a lot of visits. He'll definitely be back in Gainesville in the spring, probably multiple times. Already had an OV set. He's the first guy that we found out that had an OV set on Florida's board. It was like back in January. So Florida wasted little time, setting these OVs, and it showed like who's near the top of their board. I think he's obviously one that we have to be monitoring. When you look at the board too, Kennedy Brown, he's a 5-star kid out of Texas. Another Texas kid who couldn't make the junior day because of weather, but Florida's still pushing really hard and trying to get him on campus. So when you look at Florida's offensive line board, there's a good 8 to a dozen guys that Florida's like heavily in play for. And I always tell people on our website too, everyone's saying, hey, we have no commitments yet, but with this NIL era, a lot of those conversations ramp up during the OVs.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these kids are obviously having those conversations with so many schools. And I think once those visits happen in the spring and summer, I think you can see Florida adding one of the better offensive line classes in the country. And that's what Troutwine's telling these kids. That's been the main message, saying, hey, I'm back home. I don't plan on leaving here. They would have to kick me out to get out of Gainesville. And he's like, my goal is to sign the number one offensive line class in the country. And based off the board right now, there's a lot of traction with those elite names that could put together the best class.
All right, let's move outside the trenches right now. And, to your comment about no commitments. We're in a dead period, January was a contact period. There was a lot of visits going on. There were some commitments, but I don't think we saw a huge run on commitments, the type that we're going to see come maybe May, June, and July. So there's still a lot 100%. Of time. And I wanted to get your opinion on some names that you feel real good about as we kind of enter spring recruiting. Maybe not the next to commit, because like you said, a lot of these top guys have their own timeline. It's not just, hey, I really like this program, time to commit. So that being said, as we enter spring recruiting season, who do you feel good about on the Gators board?
Yeah, I'll start at tight end real quick too, because George Lamons, he's a kid out of the state of Georgia, former Texas A&M commit, has Florida at the top of his list. I think Florida, they obviously signed 3 guys out of the portal at tight end, but they really need more athleticism for that room. And I think Lamons is that guy that they view as more of a hybrid type. Had almost 2,000 yards receiving over the past 2 years combined. So obviously he's a big play guy that you can flex out. I know Florida, they're leading right now. I know it's a guy near the very top of their board. Jackson Bollinger, he's a kid out of Centerburg, Ohio, who has visited 4 times, has his 5th visit lined up to Florida this spring, and then obviously he's going to visit for an OV2. I think Florida has all the momentum there. He's more of an inline guy, but is more capable as a pass catcher. I think if Florida was to land both of them, that would give them, they'd be very pleased. Those are 2 of their top tight end targets. I think Bam Whitefield, he's a kid out of Orlando, the First Academy, a defensive back, and he just decommitted from Tennessee. And even before he decommitted from the Volunteers, he was saying Florida's the school pushing the hardest for me, from John Sumrall's recruiting him, safeties coach Chris Collins, Brandon Harris, the quarterback's coach, Brad White, the DC. So that to me shows how invested they are in him. The whole staff is coming after him. Another one too, Josh, Jabio Smith. We just actually wrote about him today over at Gators Online. He's a big time linebacker, one of the top linebackers in the country. Intel from talking to a few sources, I think right now Florida, South Carolina, and probably Auburn are probably the 3 schools we're monitoring most. Georgia's another one, but I know from what we're told, Georgia's a few guys higher on the board right now. But I know Florida, Greg Gasparotto, the linebackers coach at Florida, he has the Gators surging with him, and they're probably the hottest team in his recruitment right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously one guy we'll be tracking heavily throughout the spring. And if Florida was to land him, and I think linebacker is another important position this cycle. They only signed 1 last year. So this year they're probably going to load up with probably 2 or 3. And if they were able to sign Smith, they'd be very pleased. And I think one other one too, Josh, we'll mention is Frederick Ards out of Orlando Jones. He's one of the he's arguably the top pass rusher in the state of Florida for this cycle. As you know, Josh, Orlando Jones, they play against top competition. He had 11 sacks as a junior, and Florida needs a lot more pass rushers. Last year they signed Kevin Ford, who's obviously a big one. But even before that, Jaden Woods, who's coming back, he was tied for the team lead with 3.5 sacks. And as you know, if you want to be able to compete in the SEC, you need the number higher from some of those players. So it shows why they're heavily invested in Ards, who I think this year is probably going to surpass that 11 sack number he has as a junior. So we'll be tracking him throughout the whole fall.
All right, Gator fans, what do you think? How you feeling about recruiting? How do you feel about John Summerall and the staff hitting the ground running? Who is your favorite target on the board, and who do you want to sign at quarterback? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk Texas Tech recruiting as the Red Raiders are trending for a couple blue chip targets. We got Sam Spiegelman, national analyst here at Rivals. We're going to break down the latest developments. But first, Texas Tech fans, we love talking Red Raider recruiting. Joey McGuire and his staff are killing it right now. So make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel because we're going to be here all offseason long. All right, let's bring in a national analyst, Sam Spiegelman, and we'll start with your take on Jalen Brewster. It was about a week or two ago when the defensive line coach left, and Jalen Brewster said maybe his commitment isn't as solid as some people expected, but then there was subsequent reporting from you, Steve Wiltfong, and others. So just what's your opinion on Jalen Brewster, his commitment status, and moving forward?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of an awkward question and comment exchange, but from speaking to Jalen Brewster, from speaking to sources in West Texas, and from speaking to sources very close to Jalen's recruitment, this is a non-issue. Texas Tech just hired a new defensive line coach, Amar J. Albury, who Jalen Brewster does not know very well, but is very excited to go learn about him, to meet him. He's expressed that to Rivals. From talking to sources around his recruitment, the sense is he's very locked in. That's a quote. And then when I followed up about the level of concern, they said -10. So I think that answer somewhat sums it all up for you, Josh. He is the crown jewel of Texas Tech's top 5 recruiting class. The way that the Red Raiders already have a blue chip foundation in place and are continuing to recruit these top ranked recruits, not only in Texas, but around the country. I got a feeling that they're going to end up in the top 1, 2, or 3 when it's all said and done. And that when it's all said and done, I expect Jalen Brewster to be the highlight of this 2027 haul for the Red Raiders.
All right. So it sounds like things have stabilized. That was just probably one of many rumors that are going to fly this offseason, but I'm glad that we could kind of talk about it here and get things straightened out. All right. So we're talking about blue chippers Texas Tech is in good shape with. I want to start with wide receiver Benny Easter Jr. What's the latest on him? I saw you had a report this week.
Yeah, again, much like Jalen Brewster, one of the blue chippers already on board for Texas Tech, the first to believe in Benny Easter, got him committed in November after visiting Lubbock for game day. But that doesn't mean that other schools are going to stop recruiting him. Josh, he saw a flood of new offers come in when coaches were on the road last month. And he's going to officially visit not only Texas Tech, but he's locked in an official visit to go see Ole Miss in June. Other schools that are swinging away here and in the mix for official visits include Ohio State, LSU, Texas, and of course Vanderbilt, coming off of their sensational season last year. Only Ole Miss and Texas Tech are set, and in the long term, much like Jalen Brewster, I think that Benny Easter is going to end up being a Red Raider. That staff not only recruits him very well, but have a lot to offer him, including early playing time, and the fact that they offered first and got his commitment. They're playing from ahead moving forward, but the competition will be there heading into the spring and summer visits.
All right, so you've been out at camps, you've been out at 7-on-7s. Who do you feel through your reporting that Texas Tech is in good shape with right now?
Yeah, one of their top targets in the secondary is blue chipper Jerry Outhouse. He's the number 7 ranked cornerback in the Rivals 300, a fantastic position versatile secondary target for Joey McGuire, Darcel McBath, and the Red Raiders. He's between Texas Tech and Georgia. Other schools like UCLA, Florida, Arizona State are all swinging away, but this is going to come down to the Red Raiders in Georgia. A commitment could come as early as February, potentially even this spring. I like where the Red Raiders have and continue to sit with Jerry Outhouse. I also think that they're going to be tough to beat for 4-star offensive lineman Peyton Miller. The Texas Longhorns have closed the gap pretty significantly after getting Miller and his family back to Austin last month. But he's got roots in West Texas. No one has recruited him harder than Texas Tech, and he's going to be back this spring. And for his final official visit in June, before he makes a decision, I think Texas Tech is going to be really difficult to beat for Peyton Miller. I and Steve Wilfong have predictions in for Texas Tech to eventually land top 100 defensive lineman George Toya. He's a West Coast kid by heart, but he's playing his junior and now senior season in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. His visit to Lubbock last season really moved the needle, and I think Texas Tech has some momentum heading into the spring. And then Julian Caldwell, one of the best receivers in the country, a top 10 receiver nationally. He's down to Texas, Texas Tech, and Oregon. This could go in a lot of different directions, but he's got a lot of family out in West Texas. No team has come on stronger since the fall than the Red Raiders. In a battle between 2 or 3 teams, I think Texas Tech is going to be there until the end with Julian Caldwell.
Yeah, you can feel it coming. So my next question is just that. What's the timeline here? Like, when can we expect the official visits to happen? And more importantly, when can we expect some of these commitments to go down?
Yeah, I think the next big situation for Texas Tech and other schools around the country are going to be these spring visits that start popping up in March and April. I would not be surprised to see a wave of commitments start to fall as early as those spring practice visits. I was speaking with a general manager just last night who said, do you feel like this cycle is just a little bit ahead of the last? And I couldn't agree more. I think these kids already know who their top 2, 3, 4 schools are. And we know that a very needle-moving visit during a spring practice when they can see everything up close and hear what the coaches are saying about where they sit on the board could lead to some commitments. And of course, the rest will all follow by May, June, and July when these official visits start to wrap up.
Yeah, you can feel it. The momentum's building. So Texas Tech fans, talk with us. Who is your top target on the board that's trending towards the Red Raiders right now? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk USC. Now that the dust has settled on the 2026 signing day class, I think it's time we take a look at some of the top prospects that will be making an immediate impact next season for the Trojans. We're going to break it down. Remember, this was a historic class. After finishing 15th in the 2025 cycle, USC went out and signed 35 quality prospects, finishing first overall in the 2026 cycle. So we're going to take a look first at Luke Wafel. He's the top-rated commitment in the class, signee, I should say. He's no longer just committed. He is signed. He will be on campus soon. Luke Wafel, 6'5.5", 255 pounds. You can see here why he was so coveted. The number 1 edge prospect in America. He was the number 5 overall prospect. Overall, at any given position, Luke Wafel, one of the best, and it wasn't easy to land him. Remember that battle against Ohio State when Luke Wafel committed right here on this channel to USC, a shocker. And I mean, you can see here, Luke Wafel will make an immediate impact when he steps on the field at USC. Up next, we have Mark Bowman, 6'4", 230-pound pass-catching tight end from Mater Dei High School, early on Georgia. Georgia was the perceived leader, but the number 4 ranked tight end in America ends up signing with USC. He's going to play as a freshman, and he is going to make an immediate impact. We got to talk about Kenye Pepe, the 6'7", 325-pound offensive tackle. Now, he finished his high school ball at IMG Academy down in Florida, which is probably why this was such a heated battle between Miami and USC. He commits to USC early, but Miami really never gave up. And on that run to a national championship, it was probably hard to turn down the Canes, but USC gets a good one, and with that size at 6'7", 300+, Kenye Pepe is going to make a major impact at USC. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball where we have Jamian Winfield. He is a 6'3", 325-pound defensive lineman from Richardson, Texas, and he was a priority early. USC went and got him to commit in March. Of course, other programs came at him, but this is what was different about USC's signing class this year. They didn't have many defections, and Jamian Winfield, it's clearly he's a guy that they coveted. He's going to come in. I don't know if he's going to start right away, but I expect him to make a major contribution as a freshman. Let's stay in the state of Texas and take a look here at Boobie Feaster, one of the top wide receivers in America, ranked number 4 at his position. And USC had some competition here. Obviously, everybody in the state of Texas wanted to keep him within those borders. Texas A&M, probably the most, that's probably where the biggest threat was to flip him late, but Boobie Feaster ends up signing with USC, and he's one that I definitely expect to see a lot out of as a freshman. So there you go. We talked a little bit about some of the instant impact players in USC's 35-man signee class, but you guys get in the comments section. Do you want to see more content like this when it comes to USC? Also, who do you expect to see on the field next year? Was it somebody we mentioned, or maybe one of the other 30 guys that we did not mention? Get in the comments. Talk to me about this number 1 class from the USC Trojans.